Imagine this, if you can stomach it. A symbol of hope, of unity among nations, a flag representing a lifetime dedicated to global peace, fluttering proudly in front of your own home. Now picture it ripped from its pole, torn, stomped into the dirt, labeled foreign trash by a self-proclaimed patriot whose understanding of freedom clearly doesn't extend beyond his own picket fence. For Vanessa Lee, a woman of quiet dignity and global purpose, this wasn't just an act of vandalism. It was a desecration, a declaration of ignorant war by Mr. Brian Fuller, the president of the Liberty Heights Homeowners Association. And oh, the irony in that name is just too rich, isn't it? Vanessa Lee, a woman in her early 50s with eyes that held both the wisdom of ancient cultures and the keen focus of a seasoned negotiator, had recently purchased a modest but charming home in Liberty Heights. She sought tranquility, a place to recharge from her demanding, globe-spanning, and for now entirely secret career. On the flagpole in her front yard, where many of her neighbors flew the stars and stripes, Vanessa had chosen to display the pale blue flag of the United Nations, a quiet testament to her life's work. It was a beautiful symbol, a gentle statement of her belief in a connected world. She found it peaceful. But peace, it seemed, was not on Brian Fuller's agenda. Brian was the kind of HOA president who likely measured his self-worth in the number of violation notices he could issue before breakfast. He was a man whose patriotism was loud, performative, and deeply suspicious of anything that didn't look, sound, or salute exactly like him. And Vanessa Lee's UN flag? Oh, that was a declaration of war on his meticulously curated, monochrome vision of Liberty Heights. The first official salvo arrived via a crisply folded letter delivered with a self-important rap on her door by Brian himself. "Ms. Lee," the letter began, its tone as cold and unwelcoming as a January wind. "It has come to the attention of the Liberty Heights HOA board that you are displaying an unapproved, non-national, and frankly, deeply unsettling foreign flag on your property. This is a clear violation of community aesthetic standards and, more importantly, a disrespectful affront to the patriotic values of this neighborhood. You are hereby ordered to remove this emblem of globalist interference within 24 hours or face significant daily fines and further community action." Globalist interference? Really, Brian? Did he even know what that meant, or did it just sound good next to community standards? Vanessa read the letter, a flicker of weary sadness in her eyes. She knew this type. She'd encountered them in war-torn regions and at high-stakes diplomatic tables. Small men puffed up with unearned authority, terrified of anything beyond their own narrow understanding. She calmly filed the letter away and left her flag flying. It was her property, her right. Brian Fuller, however, was not a man to be trifled with by, facts or rights. When the UN flag still fluttered defiantly the next morning, he escalated. Under the cover of a moonless night, he, or more likely, some local youths he'd riled up with his particular brand of xenophobic fervor, committed their act of petty treason against peace. Vanessa awoke to find her flagpole bare, the UN flag itself gone, ripped from its halyards. A search of her yard revealed it stuffed into her trash can, torn, dirtied, and with a crude, spray-painted USA #1. "Go home," scrawled across its pale blue field. Can you even imagine the level of disrespect? The sheer, unadulterated, ignorant hate? Vanessa retrieved the desecrated flag, her face a mask of cold, controlled fury. She didn't scream. She didn't rage. She meticulously photographed the damage, every rip, every stain, every hateful letter of the graffiti. Her mind, the mind of a seasoned diplomat trained to navigate international incidents, was already documenting, analyzing, preparing. Brian, of course, couldn't leave it at that. His fragile ego, it seemed, required a public performance. That afternoon, he stood on the sidewalk in front of Vanessa's home with a cheap, crackling megaphone, his voice a distorted bellow of manufactured outrage. "Attention, Liberty Heights," he blared, startling sleeping babies and annoying dog walkers for blocks around. "We have a traitor in our midst, a woman who disrespects our country, our values, by flying a foreign rag. She is an outsider, a globalist. trying to undermine everything we stand for. We demand she leave our patriotic community. He even led a pathetic chant of USA, USA, no UN traitors here, with a handful of his equally enlightened HOA cronies. It was a masterclass in moronic jingoism. And then came the HOA meeting, convened by Brian for the sole purpose of publicly shaming Vanessa Lee. He showed grainy photos of her offensive flag, read anonymous and likely fabricated complaints from concerned neighbors about her suspicious, un-American activities. He painted her as a dangerous subversive. A few of his supporters chimed in, "Her flag is so weird it makes me uncomfortable." One woman whined, "Brian's right. What if she's a spy?" "Tear it down. This is America," another man shouted to a smattering of applause. The sheer, breathtaking ignorance on display was enough to make your teeth ache. Vanessa, who had decided to attend this charade, listened with an almost preternatural calm. When Brian, flushed with his oratory and the crowd's support, finally turned to her and sneered, "Well, Ms. Lee, have you anything to say for yourself before this community officially condemns your disrespectful, unpatriotic display and initiates proceedings to have you declared a public nuisance?" Vanessa rose slowly. Her voice when she spoke was quiet, but it cut through the hate-filled room like a surgeon's scalpel. "Mr. Fuller," she said, her gaze sweeping across the hostile faces, "your understanding of patriotism, of international symbols, and indeed of basic property rights and civil liberties appears to be tragically limited. That flag which you and your associates saw fit to desecrate is a symbol of peace, of global cooperation, of the very ideals many brave Americans have fought and died to uphold around the world." She paused, her eyes, which had seen the aftermath of real wars and negotiated with actual tyrants, holding a depth of experience that Brian Fuller, in his wildest, most self-important dreams, could never comprehend. "You speak of community standards. Perhaps you should first acquaint yourselves with the standards of basic human decency and respect for international law." Her calm, articulate rebuke, her utter lack of fear, seemed to infuriate Brian even more. It didn't fit his narrative of a cowed, ignorant outsider. He sputtered, "International law? What does that have to do with Liberty Heights? This is my neighborhood. We make the rules here." The meeting ended with Brian vowing to escalate. The next day, a new letter arrived, this one from the HOA's lawyer, a man whose legal qualifications seemed as dubious as Brian's patriotism. It threatened Vanessa with a massive lawsuit, crippling fines and formal proceedings to force the sale of her home and her eviction from Liberty Heights for persistently violating community harmony and displaying symbols offensive to patriotic American sensibilities. To add insult to injury, some neighbors, clearly feeling emboldened, began throwing trash into her yard. The online smear campaign intensified, with a new video appearing, this one showing Vanessa calmly trying to retrieve her mail, while Brian's cronies shouted insults at her from across the street. The caption, "Unfriendly foreign agent caught harassing local residents. Liberty Heights under threat." Send her back. Vanessa Lee stood on her porch, the lawyer's threatening letter in one hand, a piece of recently thrown garbage in the other. She looked at her empty flagpole. She looked at the sneering faces of a few neighbors peeking from behind their curtains. She was isolated, publicly vilified, her property attacked, her character assassinated. And now they were threatening to take her home. It was a campaign of relentless, racist, xenophobic attrition. Brian Fuller and his Liberty Heights HOA thought they were dealing with a lone, vulnerable woman they could bully into submission. They believed they were the law, the ultimate authority. They were about to receive a very abrupt, very public, and very international education on the true meaning of authority and the profound reach of justice. Vanessa went inside, picked up her secure satellite phone, and dialed a number in Geneva. "Isabel," she said, her voice now devoid of all weariness, replaced by a cold, diamond-hard resolve. "It's Vanessa. We have a situation here, a rather provincial one, but with potentially significant diplomatic implications. I need you to contact Ambassador Gerard at the U.S. mission, and then get me a direct line to the office of the Secretary General." Yes, it's that serious. It seems some gentlemen in Liberty Heights, USA, need a formal lesson in international protocols and consequences. The game was on, and Brian Fuller had just unknowingly declared war on the United Nations. Poor, misguided, soon-to-be very sorry Brian. The days following Vanessa Lee's call to her international contacts settled into a strange, deceptive calm in Liberty Heights, at least on the surface. For Vanessa, it was the quiet intensity of a chess grandmaster anticipating her opponent's next clumsy move. For Brian Fuller, HOA president and self-styled guardian of American purity, it was the smug satisfaction of a bully who believes he has finally cowed his victim into submission. He had no idea, of course, that his little neighborhood crusade had already pinged on radar screens in diplomatic missions and federal buildings far beyond his limited comprehension. Oh, Brian, if only you knew the hornet's nest you so gleefully prodded with your little stick of bigotry. The Liberty Heights HOA, with Brian at the helm, and their equally clueless local lawyer, a man named Chester Grubbs, who probably thought international law was something you studied to order foreign takeout, formally served Vanessa with their ludicrous lawsuit. It was a masterpiece of parochial paranoia, accusing her of creating a public nuisance, diminishing neighborhood aesthetic values with unauthorized foreign insignia, and most laughably, inflicting severe emotional distress upon the patriotic residents of Liberty Heights. They demanded she remove the new, even larger, and more impeccably displayed United Nations flag she had since erected, pay a series of exorbitant, fabricated fines, and issue a public apology to the HOA for her un-American behavior. Vanessa received the legal documents with an almost serene composure. She scanned them briefly, a flicker of something, amusement, pity in her intelligent eyes. She then calmly forwarded encrypted copies to her actual legal team, a formidable group of international law experts based in Washington, D.C. and Geneva, lawyers who routinely dealt with sovereign states and violations of diplomatic protocol, not squabbles over lawn gnomes and picket fence heights. One can only imagine their collective, weary sigh before they sharpened their legal talons. Yes, Ms. Lee, her lead counsel, a distinguished QC named Alistair Finch, no relation to the birdwatcher, just a name synonymous with quiet, devastating legal power in this universe, probably said, "We will draft an appropriate and I trust definitive response. Consider Mr. Fuller under advisement." Brian, of course, took Vanessa's lack of immediate hysterical capitulation as further proof of her insolence. He ramped up the pressure. The online smear campaign, orchestrated on the Liberty Heights community Facebook page, a page now likely being monitored by federal cybercrime units, unbeknownst to its self-important administrator Brian, intensified. New posts appeared daily calling Vanessa a foreign agent, a globalist plant, accusing her of secret, late-night meetings with suspicious foreigners. This was probably just Vanessa taking out her recycling bins after dark, folks, but try telling that to Brian's fevered imagination. The comments section was a delightful cesspool of xenophobia and misspelled outrage. The physical harassment also continued. More trash found its way onto Vanessa's lawn. Anonymous, threatening notes, filled with badly spelled patriotic slogans and vague threats of deportation, to where exactly Brian never specified, were left on her doorstep. One morning she found her mailbox vandalized, twisted into a sad metallic pretzel. Each incident was meticulously documented by Vanessa. Timestamp photos, saved screenshots, even discreet audio recordings from her porch security system capturing the brave, anonymous patriots in action. Her evidence file was growing. Her resolve was crystalline. And then the subtle signs began, signs that would have alerted any moderately intelligent observer that the game had changed, that forces far beyond Brian Fuller's limited understanding were now in play. An immaculately polished black sedan with dark-tinted windows, an official-looking, but non-local, government plates was seen driving slowly, almost reflectively, through Liberty Heights, pausing for a moment in front of Vanessa's house, then continuing on its way. Brian, who probably fancied himself a neighborhood watch captain, noticed it. "See?" he crowed to his HOA cronies. "I told you she was trouble. Probably her foreign spy handlers checking up on her." The man's capacity for self-delusion was truly a wonder to behold. A few days later, Vanessa received a discreet visit, not from Brian or his goons, but from a very serious, very quiet man in a very conservative suit who introduced himself as Mr. Smith from the State Department. He didn't stay long. He simply expressed the U.S. government's ongoing commitment to upholding its international treaty obligations regarding the protection of diplomatic personnel and symbols, asked Vanessa if she required any immediate assistance or enhanced security, and left her with a secure contact number. Vanessa politely declined immediate assistance, assuring Mr. Smith that she had the situation well in hand. Mr. Smith did not look surprised. Brian Fuller, of course, remained blissfully, catastrophically ignorant. He was too busy planning his grand public triumph, the special HOA meeting and community forum, where he would personally preside over the trial of Vanessa Lee. He sent out formal, almost gleeful, invitations to all residents, urging them to attend and witness community standards being upheld and un-American activities being decisively rejected. He even, in a fit of supreme hubris, tipped off a local news blogger known for his sensationalist, right-wing tirades, promising him an exclusive on how Liberty Heights is fighting back against the globalist agenda. Oh, Brian, you are truly a gift to storytellers everywhere. Vanessa received her summons to this kangaroo court with that same unnerving calm. She noted the date, the time. She informed her legal team in D.C. She also made another series of quiet, encrypted calls to Geneva and New York. "Isabel," she might have said to her UN chief of staff, "regarding that local zoning dispute, I believe it's reaching a point where a more visible demonstration of international diplomatic interest might be instructive. Yes, perhaps a small, high-level delegation, just to observe, and to convey the Secretary General's personal regards for the proper treatment of UN-affiliated personnel." The night of the HOA trial arrived. The Liberty Heights Community Clubhouse was packed, buzzing with a mixture of righteous indignation from Brian's camp and nervous curiosity. Brian Fuller, puffed up like an adder, sat at a long table at the front, flanked by his HOA board, looking for all the world like a panel of inquisitors from a very bad historical reenactment. He had his gavel, he had his megaphone, just in case. He was ready for his close-up. Vanessa Lee was, of course, not present, or so it seemed. Brian made a great show of calling her name, of noting her cowardly absence in the face of community justice. He then launched into his pre-prepared speech, a rambling, incoherent diatribe about patriotism, property values, and the sacred duty of the HOA to protect Liberty Heights from foreign influences and undesirable elements like Ms. Vanessa Lee and her offensive, un-American flag. He was just getting to the part where he would demand a unanimous vote to fine her into oblivion and initiate immediate eviction proceedings when the main doors of the clubhouse creaked open. Every head turned. Standing in the doorway, looking like he was about to personally demand a fine from Vanessa, was Brian Fuller himself, along with two of his burliest HOA enforcers, and poor, out-of-his-depth Biff Henderson, their lawyer. Brian was holding an official-looking document, a triumphant sneer plastered across his face. He clearly intended to serve Vanessa with some final, humiliating notice at her own home, perhaps after his vote here tonight. He must have seen the lights on at her house and assumed she was cowering inside. "Well, well, well," Brian boomed, striding towards where he thought Vanessa might be hiding, or perhaps just addressing the empty space where she should have been. "Ms. Lee, since you refuse to face this community has come to you. I have here the HOA's final demand for payment of $20,000 in fines for your continued defiance, and a notice that eviction proceedings will commence in 24 hours if that flag is not removed and the fine paid." He waved the paper theatrically. "What do you have to say to that, Ms. Lee? Cat got your tongue, or has your foreign consulate advised you to remain silent?" And then from the quiet shadows of Vanessa Lee's porch, a voice calm and clear replied, "Actually, Mr. Fuller, I was just about to offer you and your associates some tea. It's a rather excellent blend from Sri Lanka. But perhaps before we discuss fines and evictions, you might care to meet a few of my house guests? Vanessa Lee stepped out from her front door into the porch light. She was dressed impeccably, not in casual attire, but in a sharply tailored diplomatic suit, and she was not alone. Standing beside her, looking utterly unamused, were two men and a woman whose air of quiet, steely authority made Brian Fuller's performative bluster look like a child's tantrum. One man, tall and distinguished, had the unmistakable bearing of a senior ambassador. The woman, equally poised, held a slim leather attaché case that practically screamed international incident. The third, a younger man, looked like he could dismantle Brian Fuller with a single, well-placed diplomatic communique. Brian Fuller and his entourage stopped dead in their tracks. Their smug expressions faltered, replaced by a sudden, dawning confusion. Who the hell are these people? Brian blustered, his bravado suddenly sounding a little shaky. Vanessa Lee allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile, the kind of smile that precedes a devastating checkmate. "Mr. Fuller," she said, her voice like silk wrapped around a core of pure titanium. "Allow me to introduce His Excellency, Ambassador Jean-Pierre Dubois, Special Envoy from the Office of the United Nations Secretary General. And this is Ms. Catherine Albright, Senior Advisor from the United States Department of State, Office of Foreign Missions, and Mr. Chen from UN Legal Affairs." They were just expressing their profound interest in the treatment of internationally protected diplomatic persons and the respect afforded to internationally recognized symbols of peace right here on United States soil. Particularly, she paused, her eyes locking onto Brian's, "in Liberty Heights, Mr. Fuller. It seems your little neighborhood has just made it onto the International Diplomatic Watch List. Congratulations!" The color drained from Brian Fuller's face. His jaw dropped. The final demand fluttered from his suddenly nerveless fingers. He looked from Vanessa to the ambassador, to the State Department official, to the UN lawyer, then back to Vanessa. The pieces, the horrible, catastrophic pieces, were finally, terrifyingly, clicking into place in his small, prejudiced mind. He hadn't just been harassing a resident. He had been systematically attacking, slandering, and attempting to evict a high-ranking United Nations diplomat on American soil while she was effectively on duty. The local HOA meeting he was so eager to return to, the one where he was about to cement his triumph, it suddenly seemed very, very far away and utterly, laughably insignificant. He had brought a megaphone to a cannon fight, and the cannons were now aimed directly at him. Brian Fuller, flanked by his two most thuggish HOA enforcers and his quivering lawyer, Biff Henderson, stood on Vanessa Lee's porch, the HOA's threatening letter clutched in his hand like a weapon. He pounded on the door again, a smug, impatient sneer on his face. He was ready for her to grovel. He was ready for her surrender. He was, as it turned out, ready for absolutely nothing that was about to happen. The door opened, not to a frightened, defeated Vanessa Lee, but to Vanessa Lee looking every inch the composed, powerful woman she truly was, dressed in a sharply tailored diplomatic suit. And beside her, standing with an air of quiet, unimpeachable authority, were the three individuals Brian had so dismissively referred to as her foreign spy handlers when he'd seen their official-looking car earlier. "Mr. Fuller," Vanessa said, her voice calm, cool, and carrying an edge of pure, unadulterated steel. "So kind of you to drop by. I believe you were about to serve me with some paperwork?" She gestured for them to enter. Brian, momentarily thrown off by her composure and the imposing presence of her guests, nevertheless barged in, his enforcers close behind. "That's right, Lee," he blustered, recovering his usual arrogance. "This is your final warning. Pay the $20,000 fine for your offensive flag and your general un-American behavior, and remove that reg by noon tomorrow, or the HOA will begin eviction proceedings, and we will win. Who do you think you are, calling in these people?" He waved a dismissive hand at Vanessa's guests. Vanessa actually smiled, a genuine, if chilling, smile. "Mr. Fuller," she said, Allow me to make some proper introductions, since your investigative skills seem somewhat lacking. She turned to her guests. Your Excellency, Ambassador Jean-Pierre Dubois, Special Envoy from the Office of the United Nations Secretary General. Ms. Catherine Albright, Senior Advisor from the United States Department of State Office of Foreign Missions, and Mr. Jianli Chen from the United Nations Office of Legal Affairs. Gentlemen, Miss Albright, may I present Mr. Brian Fuller, President of the Liberty Heights Homeowners Association, a man who has, over the past few weeks, taken a rather aggressive stance against symbols of international peace and cooperation. The color drained from Brian Fuller's face as if a tap had been opened. His jaw dropped. His eyes bulged. Ambassador Dubois, a man who had stared down warlords and negotiated peace treaties, looked at Brian with an expression of such profound, icy disdain that Brian visibly withered. Ms. Albright from the State Department simply raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, a gesture more terrifying than any shout. Mr. Chen, the UN lawyer, opened his slim leather briefcase. Oh, Brian, you are in such a world of diplomatic doo-doo right now, aren't you, buddy? Mr. Fuller, Ambassador Dubois began, his voice a low, cultured rumble that nonetheless carried the weight of the entire United Nations. Ms. Vanessa Lee is a highly respected, long-serving senior diplomat and special envoy for peace initiatives with the United Nations. She operates under the full protection of international diplomatic conventions, to which the United States is a signatory. The flag you and your associates saw fit to desecrate was not merely a piece of cloth, sir. It was a symbol of global peace, a symbol under which UN personnel, including Miss Lee, undertake missions of vital importance in the most dangerous parts of the world. Furthermore, Mr. Fuller, Ms. Albright from the State Department chimed in, her voice crisp and authoritative. Your targeted harassment of Ms. Lee, your xenophobic and racially motivated attacks, and your attempts to intimidate and extort an internationally protected person on U.S. soil constitute a serious breach of not only U.S. law, but also our international treaty obligations. The Secretary of State has been personally briefed on your activities. Brian Fuller was now trembling so violently he looked like he might shatter. His enforcers were backing away slowly, their faces pale with dawning terror. Biff Henderson, the lawyer, looked like he was about to faint. And now, Mr. Fuller, Vanessa said, her voice still calm, but with that dangerous edge now fully unsheathed. Since you were so keen on public displays and video evidence, she gestured towards a large television screen on her living room wall. It flickered to life, not with a local news blog, but with crystal-clear footage from the United Nations General Assembly Hall in New York. There on the screen, addressing a packed assembly of world leaders and diplomats, was Vanessa Lee herself, delivering a powerful, impassioned speech on the importance of global peace and understanding. Her name and title, Vanessa Lee, UN Special Envoy, Peace and Reconciliation Initiatives, were prominently displayed. The flag you tore down, Mr. Fuller, Vanessa said quietly as the video played. It flew over my field office in a war-torn nation for 3 years, while I negotiated a ceasefire that saved thousands of lives. It is a symbol of hope for people who have known only despair. The video ended. The room was silent, save for Brian Fuller's ragged, panicked breathing. Mr. Chen, the UN lawyer, then stepped forward, holding a sheaf of official-looking documents. Mr. Brian Fuller, he stated formally, as a result of your actions, which constitute a grave insult to the United Nations and a direct threat to its personnel, a formal international inquiry has been launched by the UN Office of Internal Oversight Services in full cooperation with the U.S. Department of State. Furthermore, pending the outcome of this inquiry, and due to the credible threats you have made against Ms. Lee and your clear disregard for lawful authority, an immediate international travel restriction is being placed upon you and all named board members of the Liberty Heights Homeowners Association. Your passports will be flagged. You are not to leave the jurisdiction of the United States. He then served Brian with a document. This is a formal diplomatic protest and a request for immediate remedial action, including criminal investigation by U.S. authorities. Brian Fuller let out a strangled gurgle. A travel ban? International inquiry? He looked wildly at Vanessa, his eyes filled with a desperate, pathetic plea. Ms. Lee, Your Excellency, please, I didn't know. It was a misunderstanding, a joke, a terrible, terrible mistake. I'll pay for the flag. I'll resign from the HOA. I'll, I'll make a public apology to the whole United Nations. He was practically on his knees. Oh, how the mighty have fallen, folks. From HOA king to international incident in one easy lesson. Vanessa Lee looked down at him, her expression unyielding. Mr. Fuller, she said, her voice like ice, you had ample opportunity to behave with decency, with respect, with basic human civility. You chose instead a path of bigotry, vandalism, and thuggery. You chose to threaten and intimidate a woman in her own home because you didn't like her flag, or perhaps because you didn't like her. She paused. Justice, Mr. Fuller, is not about apologies when you get caught. It's about accountability. And accountability is now coming for you on a global scale. She nodded to Ambassador Dubois. Your Excellency, I believe our work here is done for the moment. The fallout was, as one might expect, devastatingly complete. The Liberty Heights HOA, faced with an international investigation, a multi-million-dollar civil rights lawsuit from Vanessa Lee's formidable legal team, and the universal condemnation that followed the global media explosion, that video of Brian's megaphone rant, now intercut with Vanessa Lee addressing the UN, got 50 million views under headlines like, Petty Tyrant Declares War on UN Diplomat, Gets Globally Schooled, collapsed into bankruptcy, and was ignominiously dissolved. Brian Fuller, personally ruined, lost his home, his job. Turns out his employer didn't appreciate having an internationally recognized bigot on staff, and his reputation. He became a pariah, a walking punchline. Vanessa Lee, with the substantial damages awarded from her lawsuit, didn't just replace her flag. She bought the foreclosed, now abandoned Liberty Heights clubhouse and, with the support of international donors and her own considerable resources, transformed it into the Lee Center for International Peace and Understanding. It became a vibrant hub, hosting international seminars, cultural exchange programs, and workshops on conflict resolution, with a beautiful garden of flags, proudly displaying the emblems of all UN member states. The only people permanently banned from attending any of its events? Mr. Brian Fuller and his former HOA board cronies. Their names were on a small, discreet, but very firm list. In a truly fitting tribute to her lifelong dedication to peace, further amplified by her courageous and principled stand against local bigotry that had inadvertently highlighted global issues of intolerance, Vanessa Lee was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize the following year. Her acceptance speech in Oslo, a powerful call for peace, understanding, and respect at every level of human interaction, from global diplomacy to neighborhood relations, moved the world. And Brian Fuller? Our final scene catches him, a broken, bitter man, working a menial, minimum wage job at the international terminal of the city airport. He's part of the cleaning crew, his task today, meticulously, miserably, polishing the glass cases that display the dozens of international flags in the Hall of Nations. He looks up, his face gaunt and defeated, and sees a news report on a large airport monitor. Vanessa Lee, radiant and regal, accepting her Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo. Speaking of global harmony, a single greasy tear traces a path through the grime on Brian's cheek. The narrator might just chuckle here. Well, Brian, looks like you finally got that international flag-related job you were so passionate about. Just perhaps not in the supervisory capacity you envisioned. Careful what symbols you desecrate. You might just end up polishing them for the rest of your life. Vanessa Lee, perhaps in a voiceover from her Nobel speech, or in a final quiet moment looking out over the garden of flags at her Peace Center, delivers the closing thought. Peace is not a passive state. It is an active commitment, a daily choice. It begins not in the halls of great power, but in our own hearts, in our own communities, in how we treat our neighbors, regardless of the flag they fly or the color of their skin. We must never allow ignorance or prejudice to destroy the symbols or the substance of our shared humanity. For true justice, in its deepest sense, is simply global peace. The camera pans up to the sign of the Lee Center, gleaming in the sunlight, global justice, local respect. And the world, or at least our audience, cheers. Loudly. What a diplomat. What a story.